It is the 1800s, and outside, the winter wind is a predator. Inside, your hearth is fading. When your house drops below freezing, your body doesn't just get cold. It begins to consume itself just to keep your heart beating. To survive, you don't need a meal, you need a weapon. Tonight, we're looking at the high-calorie, forgotten recipes grandmothers used to shield their families from the frost. The fat pillar, the 9,000-calorie diet. In a house with no heating, the body demands fuel that burns efficiently. This is where fat becomes a weapon against the cold. Salt pork, a block of cured meat coated in crystalline brine, is the backbone of winter sustenance. Hung in the larder or buried in the cellar, it will last for months, slowly releasing its concentrated energy when boiled in a pot or chopped into stews. Pemmican, a mixture of dried meat and rendered tallow, acts as a portable caloric reserve able to be eaten raw or melted into porridge. A grandmother preparing a winter meal is less concerned with taste than with caloric efficiency. One serving may not satisfy the tongue, but it keeps the body from consuming itself. It is a grim calculus. 6,000 to 9,000 calories a day, a furnace of energy to fend off frostbite and hypothermia. And every meal, a battle against the elemental cold. When the salt pork diminishes, ingenuity becomes grimly creative. Offal, the leftover bones, and the solidified tallow are repurposed into stews that resemble neither luxury nor delicacy, but which carry the thermal energy necessary to survive. To modern eyes, these meals may appear revolting, but they are the difference between life and death. The Cellar Secrets, the underground vault. Beneath the frozen earth lies the root cellar, a silent subterranean vault of survival. Here, potatoes, carrots, turnips, and onions rest in the damp, dark coolness, shielded from the extremes of winter. The temperature hovers between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity nearing 90%, an environment that allows vegetables to last months beyond their harvest. Grandmothers knew these cellars intimately, checking the walls for mold, arranging each root in careful rows, and understanding that a single rotten potato could spoil an entire batch. By February, these vegetables are no longer crisp. They are withered, rubbery, and pallid. Yet, they are fuel. Cellar soup, a thin broth of boiled remnants, becomes the default dinner. The ingredients are few, the taste weak, but the sustenance is undeniable. A pot of withered potatoes and onions simmers slowly over the hearth, and the house fills with a scent that is earthy, bitter, and warm, a reminder that even in the depths of winter, life persists, if only barely. The fake foods, the psychology of survival. When fresh fruits vanish and the pantry is bare, the grandmother turns to the art of deception, using ingenuity to trick both body and mind into hope. Vinegar pie, sometimes called the fake apple pie, is crafted from the few scraps of bread, sugar, and a splash of cider vinegar. It does not taste like a summer orchard. It tastes sharp, tart, and oddly sweet. Yet, for a shivering child, it is a comfort, a reminder that sweetness still exists in a frozen world. Mock mincemeat stretches small quantities of meat and fat with dried fruits, spices, and sugar, creating a filling that recalls abundance, even when actual ingredients are sparse. Eliza Leslie's recipes from the 1830s emphasize stretching eggs and milk, making custards with pared apples, or even fermented cider. These dishes are not culinary delights. They are tools of endurance, sustaining morale when starvation looms and frost bites the hands that stir the pot. The grandmother becomes a psychologist, using flavors and aromas to battle despair, proving that survival is as much mental as it is physical. The liquid lifeblood, pocket soup. Portable soup, a gelatinous dehydrated stock, represents the apex of 18th century innovation. It is a leathery block of concentrated protein and fat that can last up to a year, carried in a pocket or satchel. For families trapped by blizzards or forced to travel for essential supplies, a single morsel, rehydrated in boiling water, is a life-saving meal. The preparation is laborious, bone simmered for hours, stock reduced to a thick jelly, salted and pressed into molds to dry. But the result is miraculous. Even in the harshest conditions, a block of portable soup can be the difference between hypothermia and survival. Grandmothers understood this practicality, preparing it in batches, storing it carefully, and rationing it for emergencies. The block itself may be unpalatable by modern standards, but it is a testament to ingenuity, forethought, and the harsh realities of winter life in unheated homes. The Mason Jar Revolution. The year 1858 brought a quiet revolution with the invention of the screw-top mason jar. Suddenly, the preservation of fruits, vegetables, and even custards became more reliable, allowing families to store food for months without fear of spoilage. The era of salt and shivers began to wane, as apples, berries, and jams could now survive the cold months in airtight containers. Yet, the grandmother's skills were never obsolete. The knowledge of fermentation, curing, and improvisation remained vital. The jar may have simplified preservation, but it did not replace the creativity, diligence, and resilience required to feed a family through a northern winter. The lessons of survival were etched into every recipe, every boiled tallow, every vinegar-soaked apple, a testament to a time when food was both armor and sustenance. The rabbit stew, the Hoover hogs of winter. When livestock was limited and hunting opportunities scarce, rabbits became a critical source of protein. Known colloquially as Hoover hogs, these small animals were plentiful yet low in fat, requiring careful preparation to provide enough energy for a family enduring frost and labor. Grandmothers would slow stew rabbits with heavy dumplings, root vegetables, and a rich stock made from scraps of salt pork or rendered tallow. The stew would bubble for hours over the hearth, filling the house with a musky, iron-scented warmth. The meat itself was stringy and often tough, but combined with the starch of dumplings and the calorie-dense broth, it became a lifeline. This dish exemplifies the ingenuity of winter survival. Even lean, nearly flavorless meat could be transformed into sustenance capable of staving off starvation. The bird's nest pudding. Dessert as caloric strategy. Desserts in a harsh winter were not indulgences. They were calculated strategies for caloric supplementation. The bird's nest pudding, popular in the 19th century, was a clever way to stretch limited eggs and milk while using stored apples. Whole apples, pared and cored, were nestled into a custard mixture and baked slowly in a heavy pot. The result was a fragrant custardy pudding that could serve a family without exhausting the pantry. While not a dessert of luxury, its sweetness provided a psychological boost, a reminder that some semblance of normalcy could exist even in the most punishing months. The pudding also demonstrates the grandmother's role as a survival chemist, stretching every ingredient to maximize both energy and morale. Salted beef and SOS, pantry, staples in a freezing world. Salted and dried beef, often prepared as cream chipped beef, known colloquially as SOS, was another cornerstone of winter survival. Stored in pantries and room temperature, salted beef could last indefinitely without refrigeration. When rehydrated with milk or water and thickened with flour, it created a creamy, protein-rich sauce served over bread or dumplings. Families relied on this dish for both energy and psychological reassurance, as it could be prepared quickly in the freezing dark before laborers set out for the fields or woods. The flavor was harsh, sometimes overwhelmingly salty, but its caloric content and shelf stability made it indispensable. Pickled and fermented vegetables, the hidden heat of bacteria. Fermentation was another secret weapon of the winter pantry. Sauerkraut, pickled turnips, and preserved cucumbers were not just flavors. They were compact sources of nutrition and even warmth. Fermented vegetables provide calories indirectly by sustaining the gut, aiding digestion, and allowing the body to extract maximum energy from whatever meager rations remained. Grandmothers would layer shredded cabbage in brine, weighted down with stones or ceramic lids, and store the crocks in the coolest corner of the kitchen or cellar. Over time, the vegetables fermented, releasing tangy aromas that signaled life in a season of decay. The act of fermentation also stretched resources. A single cabbage could feed a family for weeks in small portions, a literal shield against malnutrition. The nut and seed strategy, hidden calories. For families with access to wild groves or stored nuts, almonds, walnuts, and sunflower seeds became vital sources of fat and protein. These were often roasted in small iron pans or ground into paste and mixed with tallow to create high-calorie bites. In extreme conditions, a handful of nuts could supplement a stew or porridge, adding both flavor and much-needed energy. Seeds, though small, were caloric bombs. Combined with grains and occasionally dried fruits, they helped meet the extraordinary daily energy requirements that winter demanded. The grandmother would carefully ration these morsels, often reserving them for the coldest days when the family's endurance was most tested. Oatmeal and grain porridges, the base of sustenance. Grains formed the backbone of caloric intake, particularly oats, barley, and cornmeal. Porridges cooked slowly over the hearth were the default breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner for winter laborers. Mixed with salt pork drippings, milk, or cream, these porridges became more than bland sustenance. They were energy-packed fuels, slowly releasing heat as the body burned them to stave off hypothermia. Grandmothers would sometimes stretch grains with dried apples or molasses, infusing a hint of sweetness into otherwise heavy, sustaining meals. These porridges exemplified a recurring theme in winter survival. Quantity and thermal efficiency outweighed flavor or delicacy. Mock apple and vinegar pies, psychological armor. When the root cellar ran dry and fresh fruit was but a memory, grandmothers deployed their most ingenious tricks: vinegar pies, mock apple pies, and other faux fruits. By soaking breadcrumbs, shreds of turnip, or dried rinds in cider vinegar, nutmeg, and sugar, they created a tart, sweet filling that mimicked apples. The goal was not culinary fidelity, but psychological sustenance. A slice of fake apple pie provided a sugar rush, staved off shivering, and reinforced the sense of normalcy in an otherwise hostile environment. These creations underscore the duality of winter survival. The mind required nourishment alongside the body, and a grandmother's skill lay in feeding both. Next time you complain about the cold, remember this. A grandmother once rose before dawn in a house where the air itself could freeze her lungs and turn scraps into life. She boiled tallow, stewed withered vegetables, and baked vinegar-soaked apples, not for pleasure, but to stave off starvation and frostbite. The mason jar may have eased the burden decades later, but she had already conquered the elements with nothing but ingenuity, grit, and raw determination. Every meal was a calculation of calories, every recipe a strategy for survival. Winter was a war, and she was the frontline commander, armed with an iron pot and unyielding resolve. When you feel the bite of cold today, remember her, and realize that survival, even in the harshest conditions, is always possible with ingenuity, courage, and relentless action.